Welcome to Harlem Is Healing Dialogue. My name is John Palmer. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also a member of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, as well as being the president of John Palmer and Associates. Harlem Is Healing is a program of Community Works and New Heritage Theater Group. It began in 2020 to highlight contributions of 48 community members responding to the pandemic and its disproportionate impact on Harlem and communities of color. Over that 2 years, the original impetus expanded to include response calls for social justice, to voting rights, to community policing, to the very meaning of democracy itself. And in the end, we all find ourselves dealing with a need for the community healing and seeking our communal lessons learned. Today, our guest is Dr. Lena Green. Dr. Green is a clinical social worker, psychotherapist, fatherhood practitioner, and in her more than 20 years of direct practice and management experience as a clinician, professor, and administrator, Dr. Green has had a tremendous impact on countless of New Yorkers. She is skilled in various areas of mental health program planning, development, clinical supervision, and building strategic partnerships. Dr. Green received the National Association of Social Workers, New York City chapter Social Work Impact Award in 2019. The award, which is the chapter's highest honor, is presented to a social worker who exemplifies a commitment to social justice, equity, empowerment, and civil rights through their work, research, advocacy, practice, embodiment of social work profession, and their dedication to the communities and individuals they serve. In 2015, she also received the chapter's Mid-Career Leadership Award and was recently inducted into the Pi Pi chapter of Phi Alpha Social Work Honor Society. Dr. Green holds both a doctorate and master's degrees in social work from NYU, that's New York University for those people who don't know what that is, a BA in psychology from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, postmaster certificates in advanced clinical practice from Hunter College, and the treatment of alcohol and drug-addicted clients from NYU. Dr. Green serves on several boards and is an active member of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Dr. Green, I hope that captures at least who you are and what you've been doing recently.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Palmer. I think it does. And thank you for sharing my work and a little bit about me with our audience.
Well, as you know, we have a nice little package of questions we'd like to ask you. Knowing what you do and what you've been doing is one thing, but hearing from you the work you've been doing over the last 2 years to address the pandemic with your constituents is what we're here for. Let me begin by asking, and we didn't talk about this, you can talk a little bit about what the Hope Center is as well. What services are provided at the Hope Center?
So the services that we provide at the Hope Center are really focused around mental health and wellness, and I can share a little bit about our mission and our vision. But most specifically, we provide individual counseling and group services. We also provide a host of wellness-based events that are free and available to the community. And I like to say free several times because I think it's important for folks to know that it is important to us, the Hope Center, and our parent organization, which is First Corinthian Baptist Church, to be able to eliminate any barriers that get in the way of people having access to care. So all of our services are free to the community.
How did you do over the last 2 years as it relates to the kinds of services you provide? And what about your overall impact in reaching the community in terms of those services?
So I would say over the past 2 years, like many other organizations, specifically ones that are related to providing mental health services, we all had to pivot quite quickly. For us, it was making sure that we were up and running and ready to provide services digitally, and engage in telehealth. So many of our services, like they are across the board for many other organizations providing services, have been taking place on Zoom. We've also been able to really utilize social media as an outlet to engage our constituents as well. So we're happy to say that now, as I hesitate to use the word post-COVID because we're not really in post-COVID times, right? We're just managing it a little bit better. But we are hybrid at this point in time. So we pivoted to strictly providing telehealth services on Zoom and engaging in social media. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but we're now able to provide hybrid services. So we're able to offer services both in person and on Zoom for folks who are still comfortable with either way of relating. With regard to pivoting during COVID, we've been able to provide some really amazing and incredible groups and be creative about the ways in which we engage. So we offered mindfulness and meditation via Zoom. We offered sound baths. We offered an opportunity to sort of just check in with the community and just have positive conversations with our folks who engage in what we like to call sort of, our professor of positivity, and get folks that way, as well as offering groups for specialized populations. So we were able to provide services specifically for the LGBTQ plus population, offer services for new and expectant mothers. We were also able to provide services online in a group-based form, specifically for men and fathers who are also able to connect with us.
So you mentioned pivoted, and that's one of those words that we use today.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to get a little bit more detail. So you pivoted from more face-to-face services, more traditional in-office services, to
Yes.
a variety of digital and computer-based and social network kinds of service. That's what it sounds like.
Yes.
What's the breakdown like? You don't have this, but percentage-wise, I mean, and do you have any vacancies just in case I need?
Yeah. So in terms of breaking it down, so which part do you want me to answer first? Breaking it down in terms of how many people we're able to. Okay, so on average, we provide about 150 services to about 150 clients who we call innovators here annually. We also have a dedicated crisis text line. So in 2021, our 2022 stats are still rolling in. So in 2021, we were able to provide 240 crisis intervention conversations to date. We have been able to, with our events and services online, we've been able to engage over 4,000 people as well as 2021. And then our views with regard to the programs that we've aired have been viewed over 20,000 times. As it also relates to our reach, really excited to share that we've had folks join us from around the country, as well as around the world. So that's one of the beautiful benefits of being able to offer services digitally. So we've had folks join our programming from Ireland, from Germany, from France. So it's been really exciting.
So that leads me right into, I think, the next question. What are people struggling with the most? You've got all this information coming in, different levels, different places, and what are the prevalent issues you're seeing?
Yeah, so one of the ways in which we capture what folks are really struggling with is really getting a sense of that when they sign up for services. So when you log on to the Hope Center's website, we ask folks to fill out a request for services form, and there we're able to capture what are the things that they are really focusing on or really having trouble with. And those things have really been depression, anxiety, and grief and loss, which you can imagine has increased tremendously during the pandemic.
That's kind of expected, and it's good to hear that validated yet again, because it sounds like even though you have adapted, I wonder how many other organizations have adapted. I wonder how the pivoting is going in the public, quote unquote, public sector. I mean, the city-run facilities. Makes me wonder about that.
Yeah, and just to sort of, if I can, to just add on to that a little bit, because of that, right, we've had to think about also our training for our staff here as well. So one of the most important things too is thinking about, how do we meet the needs of the community? And that is also making sure that our team has been trained a bit more around providing services around grief and loss as well. So I just want to share that.
The mental health of teenagers and the lack of it in terms of services has been a consistent topic throughout the news. What kind of services have you been able to provide to young people? Kind of what's the range of the young people that you're seeing? And where are you seeing them? Are they social media? Are they texting? Are they coming? You know.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So this is always an interesting question for me to answer, right? Because at the Hope Center, technically, we provide services to adults 18 years of age and older.
Mhm.
But because of some of our partnerships and some of the grants that we've been able to receive as of late, we have been able to provide services to teens. And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were responding to was the high suicide rates that we are seeing in Black and Latinx youth.
That's right.
That has been in the news tremendously. We've seen countless articles around, trauma, experiences of teenagers, and challenges around getting through COVID, school-based issues. And so those have been really the things that we've been focused on here at the Hope Center. And so I'm proud to share that we've been able to provide a program that focuses on youth resilience, which is actually our suicide prevention program, but it's called Thrive. And we've been providing services to actually a 12-week group-based initiative to middle and high school teens. And so we just actually finished up our first cohort about 2.5 weeks ago, and looking forward to provide those services again, starting at the end of September to coincide with the school year.
I really think it's important to highlight that teenagers incubate trauma. I work with Jackie Rowe Adams as part of her Harlem Mothers Save. I work with her bereavement group. And we're hearing from teenagers who have had relatives murdered 10, 11, 8 years ago. Are just now coming out in the family and talking about these feelings because somehow as youngsters, they weren't allowed to either talk about them or they weren't able to integrate them with their feelings on an ongoing basis. So I suspect there's a lot of trauma. You talked about high suicide rate. I expect there's a lot of that happening because of kids and the way they, in this culture, kind of hold that stuff inside.
Sure, absolutely. And I would say also because of social media, right? There's also a lot of pressure for our kids. That way, a lot of things that our children are experiencing that they're not quite sure how to handle. And so we're helping them to give them some language and really focusing on 4 pillars in partnership with some of the organizations that we work with that really focus on a couple of things that our partners who really focus in on suicide prevention services have doubled down on.
Another question that I want to get to: what partnerships have you been able to secure that are helpful for your work?
Thank you for that question. So we're excited to really share some really amazing partnerships that have really helped us to grow and thrive and expand our services here. So a few of those I'd like to highlight. One that is in partnership with Mount Sinai. So one of our strong partners here and mentors and work and providing services is the vice chair of psychiatry at Mount Sinai Hospital, and that is Dr. Sidney Hankerson. So he brings a wealth of his knowledge and work here to our work at Hope Center and First Corinthian Baptist Church. We're also able to engage in research specifically around grief and loss, as well as depression in Black men. So these are some of the things that we're working on in partnership with Mount Sinai. I mentioned training earlier, and I hinted at it, so I want to make sure that I mention our partners over at the Columbia School of Social Work, and that is Dr. Shear, Dr. Catherine Shear and her team over at the Center for Complicated Grief. They've been incredibly instrumental in supporting the work that we do here, as well as offering training so that everyone is well equipped to be able to provide intervention services as it relates to grief and also complicated grief. Of course, in partnership in everything we do with our parent company is First Corinthian Baptist Church, where we're able to get the word out about the kinds of services that we provide here as well. And just thinking about one last partner that I think is important to highlight in this area, and that is Nike, who is one of our sponsors for our Thrive program. And grateful that they've been able to really invest in us so that we can provide these services around suicide prevention for our teens.
That was a surprise. You hear about Nike in all different kinds of ways, but to know that they've actually gotten into a community-based program to support it and help them provide services is a coup for them and a surprise. Certainly to hear that. Did you say Dr. Hankerson?
I did, Dr. Sidney Hankerson, yes.
Good man. Any new challenges you would like to share?
Yeah, so thinking through some of the challenges, I think, working in a hybrid world is a new challenge, right? As we continue to navigate this COVID space. I think that, as much as we'd like to be digitally savvy, that we have to recognize that there are still a ton of people who are not comfortable engaging on digital platforms. And so we have to make sure that we're making space to be able to see folks in person. And we also have to make sure that we're giving folks an opportunity to be able to engage in various ways. I think, stigma is still something that we're still battling as it relates to mental health. And I wanted to sort of, lift up the fact that this also gives me great joy in being able to talk to another Black clinician, a clinician of color, which is really important to us. And so I think one of the things that we're trying to navigate as well is making sure that we increase the number of clinicians of color here. We want to make sure that, the population that we serve is reflected in the staff that's a part of our team. And so making sure that diversity is at the core of what we do. Harlem is a very diverse place here. And we want to make sure that when folks walk in the door, that they feel that they're able to connect with folks who also look like them right in the community where they live. One of the other things I think is a challenge is funding, right? So we also have great partnerships with some of the universities. So Columbia University School of Social Work, NYU University School of Social Work, and Hunter School of Social Work. And we want to be able to meet the need of the community by having our graduate level students join us. But we also need funding to be able to meet those challenges as well. So we have long waiting lists, as you probably know, is the case and the story for many organizations throughout the country, not just here in New York City.
Oh, yes.
Right. So I'm sure that you could speak to that as well. Here, I would say at the height of the pandemic, we probably had a waiting list of about 76 people. And some of those folks had been on the waiting list for over a year. And so, trying to figure out how do we increase the number of staff and laborers so that we can meet the needs of our community. I actually had a meeting with a school earlier this week, and they said that their staff had been trying to get services for their middle and high school students for some time now, and almost everywhere that they went, they were running into long waiting lists that were anywhere from a year to a year and a half. And so I can't imagine what it's like for those families to be on a waiting list to receive services for their young people for over a year. So those are some of the things that we're trying to really combat. And it's an issue for our profession overall.
That bell needs to be rung over and over and over again, because there's no way to expect that kids with these kinds of issues waiting for so long are going to be able to spontaneously recover or find a better place. So I'm happy to hear you talk about it. I'm sad to hear that it continues, and I certainly hope, as you do, that we can find a way out of that particular problem. Yeah. How can the community contribute to your mission? And part of it, I guess, is a workforce solution. More people should go into social work and psychology and psychiatry. But tell us how you think the community can contribute.
Yeah, so one, I'd like to share our mission and our vision and then talk a little bit about that. So our mission overall is to be able to provide quality therapeutic services to the Harlem community and beyond, in an effort to really directly impact mental health, the mental health needs, and health and wellness. And then our vision really is to empower and support our community in the process of creating and sustaining lifelong wellness. And so one of the ways in which I think that the community can support us is really by giving. You know, we are an organization that really depends on the generosity of the community that we serve. And so contributing to our work financially is certainly one way that they can support. Another way that folks can support is to learn more about our services and also tell someone that we are actually in existence. Folks can visit us online at www.hopecenterharlem.org. Again, that is hopecenterharlem.org to learn more about us. And, you know, we're here in the office 5 days a week. And folks can swing by and also join us in our community-based events so that they get to learn a little bit more about how we're helping people engage on the journey to wellness.
That sounds really good. Let me ask, and this is something that I've for the last couple of days I've been wrestling with myself. Let me ask you about monkeypox and how you guys are dealing with that, and you're seeing it develop in your constituents.
So I will be honest and say I'm not an expert around that, right? So I feel like many people, I'm sort of watching the news and getting caught up on the guidelines and protocols around that, as well as COVID, right? So we're really navigating these two things right now. Well, actually more than one pandemic at a time, and so we're trying to be as cautious as possible. Making sure that when folks come in person for services that they are wearing a mask. If they are infected, making sure that they have other ways of engaging and being connected, and that they know how to get some health-related resources when need be.
I guess this brings to mind another issue that I personally have been struggling with. The back and forth of the directions we receive from our government leaders about how to protect ourselves on an ongoing basis change based on the economic climate and how those instructions keep people away from buying, keep people away from eating, keep people from helps the small businesses in their communities sustain themselves. But there's confusion as to what we should really be doing. Do you find when you're talking to youth that they complain about this confusion? Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. What exactly? How do you get them to deal with that issue and help them focus on their own particular solutions they may create that may be at odds with what they're hearing?
Great question. So we do that in a couple of different ways. One, I always tell people it's important to think about their own level of comfortability, right? When you're inside of the Hope Center proper, right? There are guidelines that we follow here, and we ask that people be compliant with those guidelines. And so if you're in here with us, we ask that you wear a mask. We don't require that people are vaccinated, but we do certainly encourage that they get vaccinated. And, you know, think about, again, what makes them comfortable and are not. We also make sure that our staff is fully vaccinated. So that is a requirement here to be able to work and provide services. And we also work with the schools and universities where there are certain requirements that they have to be in compliance with. So outside of that, we encourage folks to follow the CDC guidelines as much as possible. We try to make provisions and have folks have information here. And then the other things that we've been doing, thanks to the Department of Health, we've been able to get PPE to be able to have on site. So we have been distributing masks, we have been distributing hand sanitizer, and then we've also been distributing personal COVID tests. And those are the things that we have been able to really put in place for our own level of comfortability and for the safety of both ourselves and the public.
Okay, that's great, and that's very timely with what we're dealing with. As we're closing out this section on Harlem is Healing Dialogue, anything that occurs to you that we didn't cover that you may want to have have just to say about?
Yeah, I would say, as people continue to think about their own mental health and wellness, that there are plenty of resources that are available to folks in the community. It doesn't have to just look one way. It doesn't have to just mean being in counseling, being across, or sitting in a chair or sitting on a couch or sitting across from someone on a screen. But that they can think creatively about wellness in various ways, and think about the things that are really important for them. And so here at the Hope Center, I would encourage folks to stay tuned, sign up for our newsletter, because we have some really incredible and amazing ways that folks can engage in mental health and wellness coming up as it relates to our mental health and wellness fair in September, and then ways to be able to get outdoors, get the hands moving with knitting. We also have a planting for wellness series coming up. So to think about the ways in which that and the ways in which wellness and health are important to you, and think about the ways that you can stay connected.
The last thing I want to ask, I asked it, in the usual way, but I really want you to kind of give us advice. Are there any personal things that you found out through the pandemic and through the work that you've been doing recently the last few years that help you cope with the stress and unwind and get up on a daily basis and go back, charge back into work and do this? What do you use? What do you find that's been helpful for yourself? Meditation, music, apps? Are there any particular apps that you think people should take a look at? Your personal take on self-preservation.
Yeah. So I do a combination of things for self-preservation. They include, stretching and exercise. I'm someone who likes nature, so I take a lot of walks. I also like to be in the park. So those are things that are helpful to me. I also do meditation and mindfulness almost daily. I walk quite a bit, and one of the things that I call my walking buddy is actually audiobooks. So I listen to Audible quite a bit when I'm walking, because it just helps me. And then I also listen to a lot of music. So between those things, and also between journaling and writing, those are the things that really help me focus, to stay centered and keep myself calm on a daily basis.
Well, thank you, really, Dr. Green, and certainly I hope you continue to thrive as you work on these difficult and challenging problems, and that people continue to join in and support the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Palmer. It has been a pleasure talking to you.